Hey guys, Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer. We talk about all things music, and today we're going to be ranking every Green Day album. So, Green Day has been one of my favorite bands since I was 16, and I've actually liked them even before they became one of my favorites. I've been a fan since I was 12. So, I thought that since I'm such a big fan, I'd do a ranking. So, let's get started with ranking Green Day's 14 studio albums, starting with the only one that I would wholeheartedly consider bad. This album is just annoying. Like I said the last time I talked about it, it sounds like they're trying to do garage rock revival, but instead of sounding like one of the good acts in that genre, like the Strokes or the White Stripes, they instead end up sounding like Jet, the band that did those 2000s era iPod commercials. Yeah. The thing is, Jet's singer actually can do a decent falsetto, unlike Billie Joe Armstrong on this album. So this is actually worse than Jet. Billie Joe Armstrong sounds awful here, and the lyrics don't help, with songs like I Was a Teenager and Oh Yeah being particularly egregious about this. Even songs that I kinda sorta like Stab You in the Heart, are pretty substanceless lyrically. There's nothing on here I'd want to go back to. The whole album is also just ungodly lazy. Like, the album art is lazy, the title is lazy, and, let's not forget, the music itself sounds like there was little to no effort put into it. Like I said, this is the only Green Day album that I would wholeheartedly consider bad. It's going in the F tier. But let's move on to the mediocre stuff before my ears start to bleed.
Oh baby, it's full time. You know I really wanna make you mine.
For those of you who don't know, back in 2012, Green Day released 3 albums in 1 year. These 3 albums all had matching titles, and as you can probably tell by the title of this one, it was the second one out of those 3. And it's also easily the worst one out of those 3. It's not all bad, like, Ashley is a great song, Wow That's Loud and Stray Heart are pretty good. Unfortunately, this album has a pretty high level of ick. Songs like Fuck Time, Lady Cobra, Nightlife, and Makeout Party all sound like they were written by virgins trying to write their first sex song. And then there are songs like Amy and Wild One, which are just plain boring. Yeah, there's enough decent stuff on here to keep it from being bad, but it is still far from good. And we're not done talking about the trilogy yet, because after I put this in the D tier, we're gonna be talking about another album from the trilogy.
Dance forever under the lights. This brutal love.
I once saw Rate Your Music user KManCF refer to this album as Filler the Album. And honestly, I can't disagree with that. Sure, there are some decent songs on here, but overall, this thing is incredibly formulaic, even by the standards of the trilogy. Songs like Brutal Love and The Forgotten put me to sleep. The one good thing I can say about this album is that it doesn't have any outright terrible songs the way Dose or even the first one, Uno, did. It's just that most of them don't stand out at all. Like, even the songs that are okay, I struggle to remember anything about after they're done playing. Are you getting bored of me ranting about how boring this album is? Because that's how I feel too, so let's put this album in the D tier and move on to the good stuff.
Well, there's no one left around, and you're the last gang in town, and your heart can't even break when it doesn't even pound.
That's right, I'm calling one of the albums in the trilogy good. Yeah, it's far from Green Day's best, but songs like Let Yourself Go, Rusty James, Sweet 16, Angel Blue, and Carpe Diem, along with Yes, Kill the DJ, are actually a lot of fun. Like I said, it does have some duds like Fell For You and Troublemaker, but those are few and far between on here. The good outweighs the bad, for sure. And since this is the trilogy, there are some formulaic songs as well, like Nuclear Family, Stay the Night, Loss of Control. Those all basically sound the same to me. But I kind of agree with John from ARTV that if you took the best songs from the trilogy and turned them into a 12-song album, you'd have a pretty good album on your hands. But unfortunately, we have 3 albums that are bogged down by filler. There's so much filler on this thing that it ends up being the second worst thing Green Day has done aside from Father of All. And this album specifically goes in the B tier. But man, this trilogy was a mistake. But let's stop talking about the trilogy and move on to one of the hot takes I'm kind of known for in these videos.
When I say there's no boy who fought his world and now he's getting lazy, there's no motivation and frustration makes you crazy.
I get why people love this album. It's Green Day at their most punk. But as much as I love punk music, I can't help but feel like the punk influence on this album is to their detriment. Like, I get that a regular punk band could probably pull off rough production, or even a Ramones core band. They're technically pop punk, but they can pull off rough production. Green Day, on the other hand, this rough production does not suit their style at all. The melodies aren't great, and while there are some great songs on here, like 2,000 Light Years Away, Who Wrote Holden Caulfield, and Christy Road, the production holds most of these songs back from being more than good. Also, Dominated Love Slave is on this album, and I hate that song. Yeah, I know it's a joke, but it's not funny in my opinion. So yeah, Kerplunk is a good album, but it's a little too flawed for me to put it any higher than number 10. And I could almost say the same thing about the next album that I'm putting at number 9. Which most people would put this one below Kerplunk, but
I look into the past and I want to make
has even worse production than Kerplunk, but I also find it to be a bit more consistent than Kerplunk because it doesn't have Dominated Love Slave on it. And, like, the worst song on 39 Smooth is Rest, and that's honestly more boring than anything. Also, like Kerplunk, this album has a few great songs such as At the Library, The Judge's Daughter, I Was There, especially, and the song Green Day named themselves after. Yeah, there's a song on here called Green Day, for those of you who don't know, and it is actually not only is it really good, it's a song about marijuana, which explains Green Day's name. Most of the album, however, falls into the good but not great camp that most of the stuff from Kerplunk also falls into. Seriously, better production would help these songs a ton. It goes in the B tier.
The secret alphabet, I wouldn't swear, and everybody's bouncing off the walls.
This one, I'd argue, is borderline great. Songs like Bang Bang, Revolution Radio, Bouncing Off the Wall, Troubled Times, and Youngblood are all great songs. But there is also quite a bit of filler on this one. For example, both the opening and closing tracks don't strike me as particularly memorable. Like, I actually think the second song and the second to last song would be a better opener and closer, respectively. Seriously, the sequencing on this album is all kinds of messed up. For another thing, songs like Outlaws and even Forever Now are a bit too slow for their own good. I know people like Crash Thompson like to rag on 21st Century Breakdown for being too slow, and I have to ask, how is this album not even worse? Yeah, this album is good, but it's definitely not my favorite Green Day album. B tier for this one. Anyway, let's move on to the great stuff, starting with...
I don't wanna live in the modern world. I don't wanna live in the modern world. I don't wanna live in the modern world. I don't wanna live in the modern world.
For me, this album is on the low end of great. I love songs like Know Your Enemy, Christian's Inferno, Murder City, American Eulogy, and East Jesus Nowhere. And Last of the American Girls is a great ode to Billie Joe Armstrong's wife, and 21 Guns is a Green Day classic. My main issue with this album, however, is that it's 18 tracks long. It just feels a little bloated, and songs like The Static Age and See the Light especially could have been cut. Also, the concept of this album is basically the same as American Idiot. They could have gone with something a bit more original. Still, I'd argue this is a great album, albeit barely. Not as great as American Idiot, but still great. I'm putting it in the A tier. And speaking of American Idiot...
She's a rebel, she's a saint, she's the salt of the earth, and she's dangerous.
Yup, it's another hot take. This album is great, don't get me wrong, but I can't help but feel that outside of St. Jimmy and She's a Rebel, it's a bit single heavy. Like, Are We the Waiting and Give Me Novocaine in particular put me to sleep. So yeah, it's not the perfect album that a lot of people claim it is, but it's still great. Especially with singles like American Idiot, Jesus of Suburbia, Holiday, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, and Wake Me Up When September Ends. I also appreciate the jabs taken at the time President George W. Bush, and the interesting concept. A tier for this one. Now for something a bit more underrated. Most people know this album for one song and one song only, that being Good Riddance, Time of Your Life. Don't get me wrong, I love that song, but compared to Platypus I Hate You, Nice Guys Finish Last, and King for a Day, it's practically nothing. This is one of two albums I hadn't listened to prior to doing this video, and so it might actually grow on me in the future. Still, even with only a couple of days with this album, I can say it deserves better. Check this album out if you haven't. It goes in the A tier. Now, let's move on to something more recent.
Do you wanna be my girlfriend? Do you wanna be my girlfriend?
I think Green Day may have saved their career with this one. After the unmitigated disaster that was Father of All, it amazes me that they were able to bounce back and release their fourth best album to date. Songs like Living in the 20s, Bobby Sox, 1981, and Corvette Summer are so much fun. And even more hated songs like Fancy Sauce are not as bad as people make them out to be. Yeah, this album can get a bit repetitive lyrically, but it's still fun. It's, aside from the pop-punk bangers, it's got some nice, touching, slow songs like Father to a Son and Susie Chapstick. This album also proves that Gen Z got their nihilism and sarcastic sense of humor from Gen X, because this album could have been written by Gen Z, and a bunch of people my age and younger would probably be acting like it's the most relatable thing in the world. It goes in the A tier. And speaking of Gen X nihilism,
I'm not growing up, I'm just spinning round, and I stepped in line to walk amongst the dead.
this album is nihilism and apathy in musical form. It's relatable, even if it hasn't aged well in spots. That said, songs like Burnout, She, When I Come Around, and Longview have absolutely great instrumentation, especially Mike Dirnt's bass playing. There isn't a bad song on here, though I will say it falls off a bit near the end. Don't get me wrong, I like Coming Clean and FOD, but compared to what comes before them, they don't really hold a candle to them. So, not quite an S tier album, but it's really close. Now, let's get into the S tier albums.
Oh, deadbeat holiday, celebrate your decay. There's a vacant silence hanging high on the notes over your own.
This was was my favorite Green Day album up until a couple days ago when I decided to check out Nimrod and My Number One for the first time. I still think this is a fantastic album with songs like Warning, Minority, Blood, Sex, and Booze, and Hold On being some of my favorites. This is another one that gets overlooked by a lot of people who only know it for Minority, but that is a mistake because this is loaded with great songs. Honestly, there isn't a bad song on this album. Some songs are better than others, obviously, but yeah, there's no songs I skip on here. I also like that Green Day experimented with more acoustic elements and some folk elements. Like, I know folk punk and pop punk are both things, and I've listened to plenty of both. But I think this might be the first time I've heard them combined. This album goes in the S tier. And now for my number one.
Cast out, buried in a hole. Struck down, once had made a vow.
In contrast to Warning, this may be the most punk album Green Day have ever done, aside from their first two, maybe. Yeah, there's more aggression, and the songs are shorter, but there's also quite a few catchy hooks and melodies on here to balance it out. It's still definitely pop punk, in other words. The only songs I'd heard from this album prior to making this video were Geek Stink Breath and Panic Song, both of which I really like. But now that I've heard the whole thing, wow, this is fantastic. Songs like Brat, No Pride, Walking Contradiction, and of course Brain Stew and Jaded are absolutely fantastic. Even the weaker songs on here, like Stewart and the Ave, and Westbound Sign, are still pretty good. There isn't a bad song on here, so it goes in the S tier. And that's my video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I'm Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer, and I'm out.